Are you comfortable? Good. It's time to get hardwood. Now hold on. This is the title of this set from Severin Films. This is Hardwood, the Ed Wood Erotic Films Collection. So I'm going to talk about dirty movies. So if you don't want to hear me talk about dirty movies, take a hike. I'm not going to be like explicit about it, but that's what we're going to be talking about. So Ed Wood, do you know Edward D. Wood Jr.? Have you heard of Plan 9 from Outer Space? Have you heard about the Tim Burton movie Ed Wood? Same guy. Well, Ed Wood did a lot of things in his career. He was never really a success, but he managed to work and scrape by. Unfortunately, he hit hard times. He became an alcoholic, and he was doing whatever work he could to scrape by and survive, always with the dream of being able to write a movie and direct a movie and all that. With a lot of filmmakers in the 70s, late 60s into the 70s, the opening of the door of softcore erotic films and eventually hardcore adult erotic films was a way to work. They were very popular. There was a lot of money. They were being made left and right, and it was a way to keep working. A lot of people that you'd be surprised, started in that industry in the 70s and went on to prominent or respectable, legit work beyond that. And others kind of wound up doing that. So Ed Wood was one of them. So what is presented on this set, I think, are a mix of films that Ed Wood either directed or wrote and directed. And let's just dig in, okay? This is wild. I love this kind of stuff. I like all kinds of movies, so I'm not above watching this kind of stuff. And I find entertainment. I find them fascinating, especially for the older eras, about what they show about the world and life and practices and what was considered, erotic on film and what wasn't. And you'll probably consider most of what's on this set not. But it's just fascinating to look at and to know that Ed Wood was behind this stuff. So this is a 3-disc set. I'm going to go through the discs. There's not a lot to say about the plots in these because, But disc 1, we start with Necromania, A Tale of Weird Love from 1971. And they're short, 53 minutes, directed by Don Miller. I don't know if that's a pseudonym or or what, but I believe Ed Wood wrote it. For the cast, it just says on screen, "Our cast wish to remain anonymous," which is hilarious. But it does feature Rene Bond and Rick Lutze, who were generally a package deal in those days. It does have optional English subtitles, which for some lines of dialogue, it's fun to turn on and pause and just really appreciate that dialogue on your TV screen visibly. There is print damage to this, but it does have very vibrant color, and the quality is very sharp. It's just, who knows if it was the only print they could find? Who knows if the original materials were beat up to that degree when they were cutting the negative? Who knows? But basically, it goes a little something like this. A couple, that's Rene Bond and Rick Lutze, go to this weird black magic cult house, bordello. I don't really know exactly what it is. They don't really get into it. That's run by a necromancer, Madame Heel, to basically get help with their bedroom problems. So one by one, the two of them pair off with various and get serviced by various members of this house or cult or whatever it is. And ultimately, the leader, Madame Heel, comes out of a coffin. It's like this weird, cheap coffin and altar set up to basically force her henchmen to take the male of the couple into the coffin so that she can service him in it, and to the tune of a very bombastic piece of old stock music that sounds like the 50s. A lot of these movies have this going on too. The music is just does not really pair well with what you're seeing, but it kind of makes it funny. Overall, it's a lot of vintage hairstyles, vintage decor, this painting of an owl on the wall where the eyes get removed and somebody's looking through that gets used again in at least one of the other films on this. And it's an early 70s hardcore movie, and it's what you expect from that. It's a lot of hair where you normally wouldn't see it anymore in one of these kind of movies. It's a lot of dirty feet. It's a lot of maybe uninspired performance. Occasionally you will hear the verbal direction of the director telling somebody what to do. You'll get people looking into the camera. It's entertaining if you're looking for it. Bonuses on disc 1 are the softcore version, which runs 51 minutes as opposed to the 53 minutes. It just takes out the most explicit things, or the finishings, as it were. And it has an audio commentary by Ed Wood, Summit host Greg Javier, and author Paul Appel, who this is on them just for the softcore version. And they talk about the differences between the two versions, and they really get into it with who these people were, how this was made. They occasionally will comment on the action, but it's interesting. I find most commentaries interesting, and you'd think, well, what is there to say while you're just watching people banging for an hour? Well, apparently there's a lot of interesting things to say because it held my attention. Also on this disc 1, is The Only House in Town from 1971. Talk about not a lot of a plot. Directed by Flint Holloway, aka Ed Wood, with Mishka Valcaro, which is a pseudonym for Uschi Digard, which is really the only reason to watch this, with Ron Polke and Patsy Brodston, if those are anybody's real names. It features, again, English subtitles if you can't quite make out the dialogue. It's 53 minutes, and it opens with a group of males and females basically like attacking this woman in a big abandoned house and then assaulting her on a mattress on the floor, which turns into just like a very willing group grope. And then you fade out on that. Then one woman says something about, well, I told the police or something like that, and it fades to black. And then they never reference that again. Doesn't make any sense why that line was there. Maybe they intended to have more of a story in this than they did. You fade out, you fade back up, and it's Uschi clad in black, looking like she borrowed the outfit from Yoko Ono in the Imagine long-form music video. And she's talking into the camera saying, this used to be a bordello, this house, and many things happened here, and basically we're going to show you what happened here. And then it's fade-ins and outs to vignettes featuring the same people we saw at the beginning. So Uschi is in like almost every one of these segments, basically just doing softcore, bumping and grinding and rubbing and things like that. So to be as crude as possible, the two best reasons to watch this film are Uschi Digard. So you see occasional male members who don't appear visibly to be enjoying things. No female areas up close or anything. Pretty dull, really. As I said, Uschi is really the only good thing about it. Occasionally you'll see a boom mic or mic shadows, and you will hear in this one the director off camera telling people, what to do and how to move and things like that. The bonus on this is an audio commentary with Ed Sutton, host Greg Javier, and Spicy Goldman of Capri Show World. It's a fun commentary, as these all are in this set. And you get an actual 3.5-minute trailer, which is interesting, vintage. Disc 2, 1972's The Young Marrieds, is 68 minutes long, comes with, again, optional English SDH subtitles, and the SDH is essential to have description for all the sounds that you're hearing. Overwrought voiceover at the head of this thing is very much reminiscent of a Russ Meyer movie. It's the Ed Wood writing style too, but being more familiar with Russ Meyer's body of work than I am of all the Ed Wood work, it reminds me of like his rural melodramas, and where we'd have this voice of God announcer with all these flowery language proclamations about what's going on. You see a very cool dune buggy up front at this film, and you see it opens with shots inside. It's a mix of shots inside, like stock footage of inside a strip club in the early 70s with some stripper that was shot like on a set somewhere. And apparently the husband of a husband and wife duo, he keeps going to the strip club. He loves the strip club. He wishes his wife would be more like the women in the strip club, and she's frigid, or she isn't into him, or he's not into her, and they have marital problems, which is the source for the plot of so many adult films in the early times. It's just, which were also sometimes posited to try to cover their butts as, well, these are educational films for couples. So he does his thing with other people. She does her thing home alone. They attempt to do their thing together. It doesn't always quite work out. There's a really good transfer on this. There's scratches and speckles throughout, but the color is really good and it's super sharp. And who'd have thought that something like this would survive this long? I believe the strip club he comes and goes from was called The Losers. You don't really see the title, but you see the exterior of it. And they get into it in the commentary. They had like a marquee outside, and they would put something that says like Loser of the Week, and it would be somebody who like was in the press for having a problem or something, or who did something bad. They would put a name outside the strip club. The Losers was notable for being the place where a lot of the Russ Meyer actresses were also dancers, like Haji performed at the Losers, and maybe Kit Natividad did as well. So they get into that a bit on the commentary. So it's cool. Like everything you see on screen, they kind of get into. Ultimately, the question of the film is, will they ever find a solution for their marital problems, or will the wife be stuck taking care of herself while listening to a really bizarre radio soap opera every day? Or maybe it's a TV soap opera, you don't see it, but she's doing her thing on the couch to herself, and you're hearing this weird dialogue, and you're like, what? Why are we hearing this while she's doing that? The commentary, again, by Ed Wood Summit host Greg Javier, and I'm going to pronounce his name different every time, and maybe I'll get it right in one of these. And porn archaeologist collector Dimitri Otis, again, really good commentary. And again, the movies are so short. The film is 68 minutes. The extras also include a softcore version that's 59 minutes, which is from a different source. Sometimes when you see a different version on these discs for various companies, they just basically edit it to conform to what the softcore or the different version was. This is actually a different source. It looks like it's from like a VHS copy. 59 minutes, as I said. You get, this is interesting. Sex Loops with subtitles by Ed Wood. It's amazing that people know that he did the subtitles for these things. The dialogue is nowhere near inspired, shall we say the least. And I'll run down what these things are. If I would give you the plot, but the plot is really a few seconds before the action starts. 15-inch commercial, 8 minutes, starring John Holmes. Devil Cult, 8 minutes. Doc's House Call, 8 minutes. Girl on a Bike, 8 minutes. Excuse me, I get choked up when I talk about a girl on a bike. Notorious Landlady, 8 minutes. The Two Faces of Kim, 8 minutes. Virgin Next Door, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is 8 minutes with John Holmes, and it reuses that owl portrait that was used in Necromania. Virgin Next Door Part 2 is 7 minutes, and Western Lust is 8 minutes. The Two Faces of Kim is interesting because it's basically a trans cross-dressing short. There isn't really anything explicit at all. I don't know if you even see any nudity in it. It's basically, I think it's a guy comes home and then changes and makes up as a woman, and then it's over. But the rest are hardcore loops. So it's what you do in a hardcore movie. It's what makes the world go round and the population continue. Although the way it always ends in a loop, the population wouldn't continue. Anyway, those are all good quality. I believe they're probably from 8mm sources. They all have the same Adult Classics logo at the front and the quick little disclaimer saying these are for educational purposes. And the subtitles are throughout. It's basically like, yeah, baby, go for it, Red. I mean, like, that's about as exciting as most of the dialogue is in any of these. But to know that Ed Wood wrote it for, alcohol money is bizarre. Disc 3 is the last disc. Shotgun Wedding from 1963. This is totally different from everything else on this set. This is directed by Boris Petrov, written by Ed Wood, with William Schallert, who you will recognize, J. Pat O'Malley, who you'll probably recognize, and Jenny Maxwell. 64 minutes. It looks beautiful. It looks gorgeous. Has English SDH subtitles, and it's basically like a Hicksploitation light melodrama, but it's not played straight necessarily. It feels kind of like a sitcom without people bugging their eyes out or anything, but it's like a straight-faced light comedy, basically. And it's basically these people who are these hillbillies, these hill folk or whatever, who, are you hillbillies if you live next to a river? I don't know. They lived on the banks of a river somewhere, and the pappies are like, grizzled and semi-toothless and have young nubile daughters who are overdeveloped and eager to know the touch of a man, and they have overeager sons who are ready to oblige with those daughters, and the fathers don't want any man anywhere near their daughter. And there's a little intrigue with Schallert knowing the secrets of a woman who wants to marry one of the fathers, and it's fun, it's light, it's silly, it's very reminiscent of the Russ Meyer rural melodramas like Mudhoney and stuff like that, only it's in blazing color, which he didn't really use for that kind of a film. And it's sort of on that level. So it's very brief. Like I said, it's 64 minutes. It goes right by, and it's fun. It's part of that Hicksploitation, baby doll kind of young woman, semi-innocent, kind of eager, and the young men who are drooling to try to get their hands on them. But it's so chaste. There's no nudity. There's nothing objectionable in this at all, other than maybe subject matter for the day. And it's the most family-friendly thing in the set. So if you get the hardwood set and you're like, what can I show the family at Christmas? I think Shotgun Wedding, no problem. Bonus on this. This is very cool. So there was a show in 1989 made for TV in the UK called The Incredibly Strange Film Show. They did 2 series. They did one, and then they did another one called Son of the Incredibly Strange Film Show. I first saw them when Discovery Channel would run them, when Discovery Channel was good. They would run those back in this period of time with a lot of other documentaries. And host Jonathan Ross, who is a well-known UK for decades TV presenter, TV host, would go and discuss the career of an individual director, cult movie director. Usually, for the most part, American cult movie. They did one on Hong Kong stuff where they had Jackie Chan, and I think maybe they did one also on Choi Hawk, and I think that was it for non-American. But he talked about various American filmmakers. So he did one on Sam Raimi. He did one on Russ Meyer. He did one on Ray Dennis Steckler. And that's how a lot of people my age first were exposed to these people. It was either the Psychotronic Encyclopedia of Film or it was the Incredibly Strange Film Show. And you were seeing, that's how I first got into Jackie Chan, is because I knew him as the guy from Cannonball Run, and I didn't know that he made his own movies. And I saw clips from his movies and it blew my mind. And same with Steckler, and same with, in this case, Ed Wood. It's the original 1989 season 2 episode 4 Incredibly Strange Film Show episode on Ed Wood. It's 40 minutes and it's great. It's Ross tooling around LA, talking to the people who were, at this point there were only 30 maybe years removed from when they worked with Ed Wood. So you get his co-stars, you get actors that worked with him, you get all kinds of people. You get Harry Medved of the Medved Brothers, who wrote the Golden Turkey Awards book, and you get a lot of cool information, firsthand information about Ed Wood. It's very sympathetic. It doesn't make fun of him, and that's what I loved about the Incredibly Strange Film Show. It was clear that Jonathan Ross really loved these movies and had an affection for the filmmakers and wanted to tell their story. So the stuff has never been legally available, really, unless it's an extra on one of these discs. The quality of this looks like somebody taped it from TV in 1989, but it doesn't, honestly, so that means it doesn't really look that much worse than it did when I first saw it. It's really good. I really wish somebody would put a set of all of those out together, because it's a pretty amazing resource. But as it is now, they get stuck on as extras on these various releases. I know Severin's, one of Severin's upcoming Russ Meyer discs has his episode, which was, I think, the one that never aired in this country. So anyway, that's one of the extras on the Shotgun Wedding disc. You get another really fun extra. Dana Gould and Bobcat Goldthwait talk about Ed Wood's Twilight era. It's 28 minutes, and it's two guys who are hilarious. I love Dana Gould. If you've never heard his podcast, you really should. And Bob Goldthwait, who are friends, and they talk about their love of Ed Wood. And Dana Gould knew Malia Nurmi, who was Vampira in her later years, and they talk a lot about just his movies overall, his late period, how bad a spot he was in his late period, and talk about the adult films that are contained here, not specifically, but kind of in general terms. It's really fun and cool. The Mad Genius of Ed Wood, an interview with Carl Abrahamson, author of In Between the Lines, Essays on Culture, Magic, and Seductive Zombie Strippers. Great title, 13 minutes. And then you get A Brief Encounter with Ed, which is really interesting. It is a 10-minute interview with filmmaker Fred Olen Ray, who's done a ton of great stuff and is now doing, Fred Olen Ray is funny because he was so known for Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, is his big title, and Biohazard and Armed Response and all kinds of 80s, 90s. He started in the 70s, but 80s, 90s B-movie, drive-in kind of stuff. And now he's found his niche as making Hallmark holiday movies. He does an interview where he talks about his ill-fated collaboration with Ed Wood called Beach Blanket Bloodbath. And that's, as I said, 10 minutes. And that's Fred talking about, he had the idea for this movie and he was able to contact Ed Wood, and Ed Wood was going to write the movie for him, and just what all became of it, and how that the treatment or script or whatever it was that Ed Wood wrote actually wound up getting finished as a novel by Fred Olen Ray that you can buy now, which I kind of want to do. I'm really curious. So packaging on this, which I believe I can show you. Yes, I can. That's the cover. So it's like keyholes are for peeping, and that little keyhole is shaped interestingly. And Hardwood, the Erotic Films Collection. And I can show you, sure, I can show you the back. Good luck on freeze framing that. And then it's just packaged with the individual discs with 2 movies on the first disc, 1 and 1 with a ton of extras. It's a really good set. Your mileage may vary with wanting to see the adult film work of Ed Wood or adult film from this era at all, because it's not as slick, and the shall we say, performance style and activity is different than you'd see now. But it's a really fascinating little nugget of film history, of Ed Wood history, and of cult exploitation or adult film history. So I thought it was really interesting. Would I watch it again? Probably not, but the extras are really good. I'm glad I saw it, and it's a really cool set. And at the bottom line is, who would ever have thought any of us would be able to see something like this? So, endless kudos to Severin Films for putting this out. Once again, this is Hardwood, the adult features of Ed Wood.